Hey everyone, welcome to 21st Century Saints, our podcast and live stream series for members of the church, those affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, all of those, people who just have an interest in it here in the UK and around the world. I am your host, Jane Christie. This is my co-host, Alana Wilson-Bryce. You want to say hey?
Hi everyone.
And welcome to all. Nemo has brought a posse with him tonight. How lovely is that? I love that. Welcome everyone. It is great to have you with us. So tonight we're gonna quickly tell you what the plan is, and we might need to tweak the plan a little bit. So here's what we're gonna do. We have been covering a series that we wanted to do since we started in the past year. We've been podcasting for just over a year now, and this subject has been super important. We have a fabulous guest tonight, and because it's completely our fault, because we've been podcasting with Nemo, we've had a few celebrations going on this weekend. We'll talk about that in a moment. Our guest is running a little bit late because we didn't get the link out till just a moment ago. So hopefully she'll be with us in the next few minutes. She's currently just firing up the old laptop and we should be good. In the event she doesn't make it, we're just going to roll it over to next week. But we're confident that technology and the Lord and all the baby angels will bless us and it will be good. Anyway, Alana, tell me, how was your weekend?
A bit crazy. So it was my birthday yesterday. I turned 41, and since I didn't get to really celebrate my 40th properly last year, I had a night out with everyone. And I thought I was 21 again, away to the nightclub with the young ones. But I had an absolute blast. So I'm not going to lie, tonight I'm feeling a bit tired from all my dancing, and I always say this, people always laugh at me because I say, so I have fibromyalgia and I get quite sore, but when I have a little drink in me, I think I'm Beyonce and I think I can take on the world, so I give it big licks with the dancing, and then today, I'm a little bit sore, but it was worth it. I had a great time. Ended up with friends and family. It was lovely.
Exactly. It's something to behold whenever Alana gets to that point in the night where the dancing seems to happen. So do you know what? This stuff that we've been talking about this past month, this has been super, super intense, especially for our girl, Alana. It's hard going, right?
Yeah.
And so it's draining, all of those things. The fact that you've got to this point, I think you've needed a break. So it's really, really nice that you were able to have that time just to decompress. So tonight, Alana is exhausted, but karaoke was happening. My son escorted Alana to a nightclub. And Alana was partying. Now, apparently, and this is a true thing, half of our old ward were all in the nightclub. I think it was at the point where I think they were getting ready to start calling members who are currently active just in the event they want to go out and join the party. So I thought it was brilliant. So Alana singing her heart out, and we had a blast.
We did.
We had such a good time. So thank you for that. It's also the Queen's Jubilee weekend, so we've all been celebrating. And coincidentally, we have Queen Maven in the chat today as well. It's so good to have the whole gang here. It's so good to see you all. Okay, let's talk for a little moment, Alana, about how this subject came up for you as being the most important thing that you wanted to cover on the podcast.
So I think there was a few reasons for that. Obviously, for anyone who's just new to our channel, is it episode 3? Am I havering? Anyway, one of the kind of early episodes that we did was my story, my church story, my life story. And I was vocal and open to the fact that I am a sexual abuse survivor, and also a domestic violence survivor as well. And so obviously that's always been at the forefront of my mind. Now, obviously, the abuse that happened to me was not a church member. Not that it makes any difference who the abuser is. And so another part of that was Jane had called me at one point, and Jane's very good at this. She always gives me a heads up with things that she feels could be triggering for me. And she lets me know before I see it on social media. And so she had told me about Sam Young's Protect LDS Children movement and what was going on with that. So that was a very big thing that really, really affected me in quite a bad way, should we say. Like, it really tore me apart, if I'm being honest. I think because, you're part of a church that you're taught is the one true church. And I'm always aware that abuse happens everywhere. It's not, what I said is, it's not about the abuse within the church. It's how it's dealt with and how it's responded to. And that's where I had the issue. So when Jane and I decided to do it, sorry, my nose is really itchy. When Jane and I decided to do the podcast, one of the first topics I said that we need to cover, which I did say would be down the line, because I knew it was such a big topic and obviously would need a lot of careful planning and preparation, and that I had to be in the right headspace as well for it. And it was abuse. And I don't just mean sexual abuse, domestic abuse, I mean any type of abuse. And that's why it was important to me to cover that.
Yeah, Alana is an absolute survivor, and we really appreciate you. Another thing about this is probably a good moment to mention that this podcast is about real life, and our ideal is me as a sort of believing active member, Alana as a member who's taken a step back. We kind of speak to that tension of what's going on at the moment in church, and so we get to have really honest conversations. So if you were in your Sunday school, Relief Society, priesthood classes, and there are things that are just not being talked about, we wanted to talk about it here, and we wanted to do it live so that we weren't tempted to filter in any way. And this could be what we actually, those vulnerable, honest conversations. So that's why we're here to talk about it. And obviously, with it being so important to Alana, that's why we're giving out trigger warnings that we're going to talk about things that are potentially painful. Now, if Katie does manage to join us, I'm just going to say you can catch our Katie on TikTok as Greenwich Spinach. We're going to put her link to her channel down in the show notes. She is awesome, but she is also, I feel like I said a but like it's a negative. However, Katie, this is an After Dark episode. Katie is unfiltered, and that's what we want. That's what we wanted to have tonight. Katie's going to talk about her story, and Katie's angry, Katie is funny, Katie is talented, and Katie has this incredible mission to make a difference in this world. She is currently volunteering on the Protect All Children page, which is managed by Sam Young. And we have Sam coming on to the show this Wednesday. So we have that. So we just want to warn you. In fact, I think we have our queen right here. Here is Katie. It's great to have you. Thank you so much. That was a panic, wasn't it? So yeah, we were just explaining this is real life. We may have technical problems. Guests may be running late. You may hear a dog in the background. A child may come into the room and demand that the entire planet stops just for them. And that is okay. We will roll with it because it's real life.
It's so funny with Daisy because every week before I come on, I say, now remember, I do not want interrupted tonight. And lo and behold, just a second ago, you probably seen me giving it this to her because she was down annoying me. I'm like, get upstairs, get to bed.
So, and the thing when you have to do the, I'm not really shouting, you want to do your church voice and do that you're in deep trouble voice, but with your face being like, you're in deep trouble. No, Alana
I
doesn't
don't.
filter that way. Alana's just like, no, I'm going to kill you.
I sometimes forget that I'm live, though, to be fair. Like, and I think I'm not on the screen, and you just see me going, get to bed right now.
So yeah, this is a nice dose of real life. And like I say, we're not filtering this wonderful woman because this is her life. This is her story. We are not going to police how your tone is. We're not going to do it. And there we have Hatchie, who is totally agreeing. Okay, here's the plan. If we don't get to talk about all the things that we want to talk about, we're going to ask Katie to come back because, you know, there's a lot to talk about. But Katie, is it okay just to get you to jump in and say hi and just give people a little bit about your Mormon pedigree and background? What kind of have you grown up in the church? Are your parents members? That kind of thing.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where to look here. So, okay, I'm looking at you. I feel like I'm not looking at the camera. So, okay, let's see. I was born into the church. My father is a convert, but my mom is, I'm fourth generation, so my mom is third, and she was born into the church. It wasn't a very good childhood for her. A lot of abuse issues passed down. But this was used as a justification for how she treated us. Like, well, because your mom's abused, carte blanche. Let's see. I'm one of 6 daughters. A 7th one was adopted. That's my niece. Long story. And what else? My mom was getting her master's degree when she was pregnant with me, and my dad was in the LDS bishopric. And both of my parents have been stake leaders. My mom was a Stake Relief Society president. My dad was a high councilman. And we were all known in the stake because our family was so big and all girls. And my dad used to always say that they specialized. So it was a abusive childhood, toxic. And I go into a lot of that on TikTok. But people at church were aware, but I think my parents intimidated people both by their power and their position in the community. Like when I was a teenager, my dad had a running column in the paper giving parenting advice. So that was a little weird. I don't know. Direct me where I should go with this.
So these are sort of ideal know how to parent kind of parents. These are community pillars, and you're in a Mormon family, so really high stakes. The home is the most important priority, and any what is it? No mistake. What can make up for failure in the home? Was no success can make up for failure in the home. Yeah, that kind of thing. So you go through your youth in church. Yeah. Do you enjoy that? Is it problematic in any way?
Well, we were in Michigan, so it wasn't like I was in the inner Mountain West, and so Mormons were a minority. And so I was always taught that you first represented our Heinbaugh name. Oops, my maiden name. Oops, beep that. Okay. And then you represent the church. And those were the 2 things that you always represented. And that was hard. And anytime I got picked on or anything happened at school, because I was bullied, because I was kind of a goody 2-shoes.
Yeah? That's so funny, especially when you see your TikTok, because you're so raw and edgy on TikTok. That is, and you're the super good Mormon kid, baptized at 8. What's the youth program like for you? All of that kind of thing.
Very small. Like growing up, I was often the only student that the teacher had, and like repeated. A lot of converts are in our branch, and so I was taught a lot of stuff that I'm not sure my parents were aware of, like Easter Sunday with Sister Benedict pounding nails into the wood, ripping the nails out, and saying, "But the holes are still there, no matter if you repent or not." And that was like traumatic. Really hard on me.
Yeah.
And we had like a little branch building that was by a graveyard, and I'd been in a car accident with my mother, and she had like blood running down her face, and so I was afraid of blood, afraid of death, afraid of graves. So we had to go to this church with an outhouse by a graveyard, and I was scared a lot of times. The people at church were kindly, But I have to be honest in saying that my parents thought that they were better. They have our degrees, and so we had to be the example in church too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you know what? I think if most of us were honest, yeah, absolutely, because we have this special secret knowledge that if only the world knew, we're trying to do everything right. Yeah, I can see that.
And lots of pressure because you get marked. Each one of us, because we're all girls, there were different things that you were this kind of person. And so I did have the expectation really early on. A violin was put in my hand at 2.5. I will be the musician, almost the prodigy. And that was my expectation from my mom. Like, you will play, and you will play in front of the church, and you will make us proud. And so a lot of the dog and pony show, a lot of the pressure. So that wasn't fun.
I know that having families like that in our ward, Alana, some of the members of your family had that expectation too. I think you're learning to play instruments almost for your future church career rather than because it's something that you would like to do. Obviously, it's important to say at the moment too, we have our incredible bestie, our 21st Century Saint admin in the comments, Sarah Elizabeth, who is great at offering support and links and that kind of thing. So if throughout the night we're going to share those. If you need any support with any of the issues that we're talking about, please do seek help. You can reach out to us and we'll try and hook you up with an appropriate resource, but we are absolutely here to listen. So with that, and with the appropriate trigger warnings in place, I'm just going to be really blunt and ask you this question. You have a perfect childhood then, is that the case?
Oh, no. On the outside it was. My oldest sister likes the song by Pink about the family photo. I can't remember the name of the song.
Yeah.
But when she shared it with me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's us.
Yeah, family portraits, it's called.
Yeah. The perfect family, and then we go home and it's hell. Just hell. Every day. It was so bad. I was suicidal at the age of 5. I would go hide in this little cupboard. We had a little library with a chest, and go in there and lay down and wish to die, because I knew Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother were perfect. And so, please let me die, because I wanted to go. I was done. And so I had suicidal ideation all the way up until my 30s.
Is that because of church teachings and you not feeling good enough, or that there was something better out there, or were things hard for you at home?
The abuse was always based on the standards of the church, because if my mom is anything, she is staunch LDS woman first. Her identity wasn't Hawaiian. In fact, she left the islands to marry a white man, to breed out the Lamanite curse, and to raise us in the mainland so we wouldn't be subjected to the evil superstitions and traditions of her fathers. She totally believed that she was Lamanite. But I didn't know I was biracial. I didn't ever hear my parents' marriage called an interracial marriage. And when I filled out my SATs, which is the high school test you take to go to college, I put down that I was Native Hawaiian and Caucasian. She had a major cow screaming at me, "You are white! You are white!" And it's this is all based on religious doctrine. And so it's I know nothing. I know she hulid. I know she knows the language. I know she knows the food. And it was always Mormon, 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 nothing else. So it was really weird, because I think people picked on me at school because I was a minority, but that wasn't acknowledged. It was always, it's your religion. And so I see this comment about Hawaiian culture. I met this other Hawaiian family from another ward in our stake, totally different. And I'm like, wait, I thought all Hawaiians were like my mom. So a lot of confusion, but it was all interwoven with everything Mormon doctrine. My mom was my seminary teacher the last 3 years, home study, alone with my mother.
Oh, wow.
Hell. And my dad enabled her, never really stood up to her. But then again, she deferred back to him, he's the patriarch. So it was always this lip service, but my parents were a team. We could never separate them out. They were always, and then they put each of us daughters against each other in islands. So if you had a little goods on your sister and you got in trouble at family council, which lasted like all Sunday afternoon for hours, lectures at the dining room table, religiously based, screaming, you could use that little piece against your sister and the tension would go over there and you're like,
yeah, so, you learn how to survive. Yeah.
It was survival. It was a war zone.
It's really important, I think, for our audience to know this too, but I just want to restate it for you, Katie. If you're not ready or this is not the right time to talk about anything that you're experiencing, if we ask anything that you're not ready or that you don't want to go there, that's absolutely fine. We will move on. Or if it's just a not now moment, then we can come back to it. Whether it's tonight or in another episode. But there are two things that I'd like to ask. And the first is you're experiencing really traumatic abuse sustained from a very early age. And yet there's this community image of this church-going family who look perfect. Tell me what that's like for you when everyone has this perception of this incredibly wonderful family who are so faithful.
Well, as the good child, I tried to do what I was told. I tried to fit in. And it wasn't until like my later teenage years, like 16, that I started to complain to people that I trusted. And they believed me. They'd say, no, your parents shouldn't be doing that. And, we never let on that we told that person, and they never say anything, but it was like an open secret in our branch. But nobody stood up to them. And I had older sisters, because I had a really advanced sense of guilt. And there was one time I wanted to confess my sins, but my dad was my branch president, and so I went to my stake president and said, I need to confess my sins. I don't remember what it was. I think it was messing around with a boy in the back seat, like whatever. And I did sneak around with boys, but I never really had a serious boyfriend. Never, because it was bad, but I felt so sinful. So my stake president came down and met with me at the school, secretly, supposedly. I think my dad might have known, but I thought at the time it was safe. And the whole stake thought there was a problem. They knew there was something going on with our family because my older sisters were already in college and they were hearing things from my sisters. And so when I told him what I'd done, he's like, that's it. I drove all the way down here. It was like a 2-hour drive for you to confess to this. It's okay, Katie. You're forgiven. But he even though he knew this, he didn't do anything. And so the abuse got really bad, and I was telling my teachers at school, and then I got a mini quarter, and I used that because I'm into foreign languages, and I was using that in school, and I thought I could prove that my parents were doing this, and so I recorded my mom and dad screaming at my little sister. Hours of it. Just left it on record in my pocket, and I ran away from home. Wow. I went to my oldest sister's house, and I said, I don't want to go back. I've had it. I'm done. So she was afraid of being accused of kidnapping. So she took me to the first counselor in the stake presidency, same stake presidency. They brought my parents in, they played the recording, and Arlie Nelson believed me. But he still sent me home. My dad was a worker for CPS at the time, which is the Child Protective Services. We don't want to ruin a good man's life. And this is a mantra that I will hear in the church for the rest of my life. Even now, this is the mantra I hear. So knowing that I was in danger and that the abuse, they heard it, I get sent home. I think it was right before my senior year. And in the car, my mom breaks into tears and my dad's driving. And they keep yelling, I'm in the back and they're turning. I can't believe Arlie Nelson believed you. After all the years we were with him, that he believed you. All this gaslighting. Because my LDS family services counselor said it was the worst psychological abuse she'd ever seen, ever in her career. And they were trying to make me feel guilty. Arlie believed you. And I'm in the back seat because I couldn't be a goth, but my inner goth was like, what the fuck? I had a fucking recording of you two, and you're still doing this to me. Of course he believed me. But I had to go home, and they promised Arlie that they would leave me alone my senior year. And they did. They ignored me. And that's how I went off to college, was escaping. And like my oldest, I have 3 older sisters. My oldest, boom, gone. The second oldest, boom, gone. And then the one just older than me, the day she graduated from high school, psh. And again, this is an open secret. And, I left for college, and I felt like for the first time my freshman year, I'm going to live the gospel because I want to. And I was the goody two-shoes, but I wanted to prove to everybody that I wasn't living the gospel because my parents told me to, or I was part of this well-known family, that it was mine, and I believed it. And so I loved my freshman year. I was, living the gospel. I was happy. I was finally having Mormon friends, and everything was on the up. I'd applied for BYU, and I was going to be in the German program, and then I met the first counselor in the bishopric. I didn't know he was the husband of the Relief Society president. They were so different. And he would hang outside because our Relief Society room had 2 doors. It was a family ward. He would hang outside the Relief Society room waiting to hug the sisters. And nobody liked him. So they'd say, oh, Brother Goodwin's at this door. So they all go to leave out the other door. And every Sunday after church, he would do this. There was a creepy man when I was a kid. Brother Baker had candy in his pockets. Give me a kiss, honey. Give me a hug. Be nice to Brother Baker. Why? Why? Why do we have to do this? Be nice. Keep sweet. Why? And so that's how I got to know Brother Goodwin, because he would always be, oh, let me hug you. And my freshman year was almost over. I was supposed to go to BYU in the fall. And my parents are like, you need to come home and strip the lead paint off of our daycare. And we'll pay you $4,000. It was like $6,000 a semester. And I could make more money staying in my job. I had 2 jobs, and I was carrying 17 credits. I wasn't stupid. But they claimed me on their taxes, but didn't give me any money. So I had to come up with a way to pay for my college because they made too much money for me to get financial aid. So I could go home, make $4,000 and breathe toxic fumes, or stay in Kalamazoo and work my jobs that I already had. So Sister Goodwin said, why don't you come stay with us? They were childless. So I'm like, that sounds like a deal. She's like, if you'll do the dishes and help with cleaning, you can stay in one of our empty rooms. They lived in a big house out in the country. And I'm like, that's good. And it was really good because my parents were pissed and didn't want me to do it. So I was like, hey, that's even better. And I could still see my friends that I'd made over that school year. And I was in love with one of them. He was a new convert. And I thought, oh, this is going to be just like my parents. I'm going to meet the convert and we're going to live happily ever after. Yay! So, yeah, I was very naive.
So, first of all, and it's mentioned in the comments, does every ward have a creepy male hugger, dude? I mean, I dislike even mentioning it because, and I think this is part of the problem, our creepy male hugger, everybody knows him, everybody loves him. And if you were to know that I were using these terms, if people listening to this show who know him, it would be so hurtful and offensive. But it's creepy. Please stop it. So in fact, you know what? I'm just going to share this. I'm just going to say this. So, and we have a fan of the show that this involves. So I'm so sorry that I'm just going to do this, but it's illustrative. The creepy male hugger in our ward is one of a set of twins, so that just narrows it down even more. But we had this young woman who was visiting our ward who was in a wheelchair. She used a wheelchair, and she was like, what I kept on wondering, why does this man keep coming over and like he keeps hugging me like several times during he hugs me a couple of times when I show up, and then whenever I leave he's hugging me a couple of times again. And she had no idea that it's a twin. no idea at all. But but as you think about that as a young woman, she couldn't say, that's really weird, this man keeps on coming over to hug me. And okay, it ends up being two men in the story, but like, people don't all want to be hugged or touched, especially when you're in youth, especially when you're a woman or a child, or just maybe just stop. I have hugging issues now.
I think the difficulty. Oh, sorry. I think the difficulty there is like, so I grew up in a family where we were pretty affectionate, most of us, and I am quite an affectionate person. But again, I think it goes along with the whole church thing, because I always just go in for a hug with people, and like I used to be like, oh, come on, just give me a hug. And now being older and realising how wrong that was of me, to be like, oh, come on, because they would be going to shake my hand, but I'd be like, no, I don't do handshakes, give me a hug. But I now realise, being older and having a child myself, that was wrong of me to do that.
Was it wrong of you?
Well, I think so, yeah, because I'm forcing someone to give me a hug without their consent in a way, because if they're giving me their hand, and like yourself, Jane, who's maybe not comfortable hugging someone, I'm kind of ultimately, like, I always say to my daughter, like, if someone asks for a hug and she doesn't want to, I'll say, that's okay, and I'll always say to her, no, I'm not going to force her, because if it's her choice, it's her consent. And I now realise that being older, but growing up, it was just normal for me to say, put that hand away and give me a hug, for goodness sake.
Yeah, which is fine, but the difference is, one, there isn't that power imbalance, so it is different when it's a woman doing it, although not always. It just, but there is a power dynamic there. The other thing is just, and I can speak to this, is because you can read social cues that a lot of these creepy huggers choose not to. So we've had conversations where we're like, so why didn't you hug that person? Because they clearly don't feel comfortable. So you do those things, you tick those boxes. I think you're good.
And Brother Goodwin was legally blind, and so
right, yeah,
you can't see. But he only used his cane when it was like convenient or helpful, like going on a plane trip. Out came the cane because he had to have the cane for the bulkhead seat. But he didn't use it like on the sidewalk. It was only, to milk it. So
do you guys see what I mean about how funny and, expressive and honest and, when the time comes, angry our Katie can be? She's amazing. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask the tough question, and I know it's a bit blunt. What form did your childhood abuse take? What forms did that abuse take?
My earliest memory of abuse is being in my crib, and I was crying, and I heard my dad coming in, and he was mad, and he's like, stop crying! And he would lay on our chests and put his hands over our face like this and lay on us, so we would stop crying because we were suffocating. And all of my sisters older than me remember this. And so, gosh, it makes me... and so that's what we learned, is you shut up when I say shut up, or you will die, literally. So it was physical. My mom used the wooden spoon. And because of the violin, I got to be the whipping post. I am not tone deaf. Because of the violin, with the fingers on the string, you had to be exact. It's like worse than a trombone. She would beat me. That's an F. I said E. And I could hear it, but she couldn't. So she would beat me, sometimes with my bow, sometimes with a spoon, never with her hand. And I know that she was beaten because when my parents went to Hawaii on their honeymoon, when my dad met my mom's family for the first time, he witnessed my mom's younger sister get beaten unconscious with a sandal by my mother's mother. So my mom thought it was an improvement that she had to make herself go get an instrument to beat me with. So she had to know she was really mad, and so she thought that was really good. It was an improvement. It was self-control. And I did things to sabotage that spoon. She had a metal one, she had wooden ones, she had a plastic one, and I burned the plastic one on the stove once. Got a big hole in it. So she went and got a metal one with slits in it so it could... But her favorite one was the wooden one. My dad would hit us with his hand. I remember one time we were going on vacation, and I was mad. because everybody was bossing me around. So I took my suitcase and threw it down the steps. Clunk, 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 clunk. He came running around the corner, beat me with his hand on my butt. Usually they'd pull my pants down and beat us. And so there was also religious abuse. Family home evening, religiously. Family council, religiously. Sundays. We were the kind that did not take off our Sunday clothes. We were the kind that fasted. 8-year-olds fasting that whole 24 hours, which I think is abusive. Children should not be fasting. Verbal, emotional, financial. My parents owned apartments, and we worked them. We would mow the lawns. We would paint. My job, since I was daughter 4, was bathrooms at home and in the apartments. So I can remember like cleaning toilets so dirty they had hair on them. And yellow, not, when I scrubbed them, they stopped being yellow and turned white. And my parents had a reputation in the community for helping the people nobody else would help. My dad at the time was director of programs for a mental health, the physically disabled and mentally disabled. Physically, it was what it was called retarded at the time. And So he was director of programs, and so they would rent to people coming out of drug abuse, people coming out of prison, people that were drunks. But we had to clean up all that when they left. I remember cleaning up a whole hallway of Bloody Mary vomit that was higher than me and like sprayed. It looked like blood. I was scared at first. And I got to clean it. Picking up cigarette butts. Taking the inside, because my mom's like a perfectionist and she was really good at finding jobs for all of us to do. There were 6 kids and she had to keep us busy. So she would take the fixtures down and give them to me to scrub out all the nicotine. Why? Why is that even fucking necessary? Nobody's going to look at the inside of the light fixture. I have a nicotine allergy now because I didn't do it with gloves on. It was pine salt and water with no gloves. And we did this every weekend. Saturday, unless it was church, was these apartments. And after all that work, $1. That was my pay for the whole entire day. And I would see my friends go by in their cars and trucks, with their boats, because where I grew up was a lake area. And we never did that. And they, hi, Katie. And I'd be mowing lawn. And so we were raised like sons. We chopped wood. We mowed lawn. I mean, my husband appreciates that because he got himself a sturdy woman. But sometimes I feel like I was robbed of my femininity because, like, we couldn't even wear pink or girly colors. I was always in navy blue and green. So it was like, because my mom wanted a son so bad, and I was supposed to have been born a boy, which I was a disappointment from the beginning. It's like she made us be boys, as close to boys as we could be. So there was that kind of mental abuse. I even know the name of my brother, David Ronald. Oh, God bless David Ronald, because, man, he would have been like spoiled child, like the perfect son. And so I always knew I wasn't David Ronald, and my older sisters weren't David Ronald. And gosh, I wish he would have been born, but if he had, that would have stopped. There wouldn't have been more children. Yeah. The oldest 2 are twins, too. And that was hard because my oldest 2 sisters were made to parent us. My mom was always busy with church or something. So my sisters did the cooking. I remember throwing up, and my sister Lori came and washed my sheets and gave me a bath. Because my mom, at 7 o'clock, she was done. She went in the room, locked the door. I'm done. And it was my sister who took care of me, the one who I considered my mom. And when I was really little, between like birth or whatever and 18 months old, my grandma took care of me all day because my parents both worked. And so I think I bonded to my grandma. And my mom and dad were like the weekend people and the nighttime people. But she was jealous of those things. So a lot of my mom's jealousy. And always feeling like I could never be good enough. Always disappointing her. If I got an A-, what's the minus for? If I got an A+ and then the next semester got an A, why did you lose the plus? When I was inducted into the National Honor Society as a junior, we had a group picture, and she was out there in the audience telling me how to stand. So I was like trying to do what she told me to, I look like such an idiot in the pictures. I'm like, you know, trying to please my mom. And I feel like it was narcissistic pleasure. I was in a band concert where I was supposed to have a solo with my oboe. They knew it was at 7. We arrived at 7:30, and my band director turned around, and he was furious because they just finished the piece. I was supposed to be the soloist, and that was my first real attempt at suicide that night. I tried baby aspirin, which is really ridiculous, but yeah, because it was like, how can I face my band director and all my friends again? Another band concert, I was wearing a kilt, and everybody was up in the bleachers. All the way home, when everybody else got to have ice cream, I could see your underwear from way out there in the bleachers. You're so on it. Purity culture. We tried, you know, being young ladies playing with makeup. You look like a whore. I mean, constant. And it was always the church standards, the reasons for it. So yeah, my self-esteem was crap. And I was always close to my school teachers. And this is something, it's not on the topic, but I think that's one of the reasons I stayed alive. They decided to do student of the month and student of the year. I think it was for me, so that I would feel special and good about something and please somebody. I was student of the month a lot, student of the year twice, in more than one topic. And I think they did that because they knew something was going on. The whole town knew. My counselor knew. With my parents having the daycare center and my dad being the CPS worker and offering parenting classes for hell's sake and parenting advice columns, who's going to believe me? Especially when my youngest sister was like the golden child, the whole narcissistic family system. And the golden child moved from my oldest twin to me to her. It was always a favorite, but it didn't leave my youngest sister. So her childhood was completely different. It was favored. And so when my sisters would come after me, I was like, no, you know, everybody's denying everybody else's story. And so the teachers were kind of bewildered, but I was considered a really good kid who was troubled and had really poor self-esteem. Brain smart, but self-esteem in the toilet. My mom often yelled at me for being too sensitive, too romantic, too idealistic. Like this was a fault. And so when people see my anger on TikTok, it's not really, it's indignant. I'm indignant. If you look up that word, this is unjust. And the reason I have stayed indignant is because I simply want justice. I want it to change. It's like the Me Too movement. People aren't really angry. I think the word is based actually in the word worthiness. This is an unworthy behavior. Stop it. Stop. And I will shut up and go off and play my harp. You know,
the whole town notices, the whole town knows, and yet no one says anything. No one does anything to keep you safe. What opportunities were there for someone to have acted?
My teachers, I mean, I don't know about mandated reporting or any of that. I did tell, because one teacher, my English teacher, I was close to all my English teachers, but especially Miss Biddlecombe. I told her I wanted to kill myself. I mean, and she got concerned and took me to the school counselor. The school counselor, Jan Stores, betrayed my trust, went behind my back to my dad. They decided to give me the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. She gave the results to my father first. And I don't know what they all said, but one thing I remember is that I was a very angry person. You think? Listen to me. One of my favorite books from when I was a kid is called Nobody Listens to Andrew. And like the kid's like, there's a bear in my room, and he goes to his mom, and he goes to his dad, and he goes to his brother, and he goes to his sister, and he goes to his neighbor, and nobody's listening to him. And they're all of a sudden amazed when, oh my God, there's a bear in his bed. He was telling, oh my gosh, it was true. He was telling the whole time. Yes. I was telling you the whole time. And, you know, the other event, which is sketchy, that happened in my teenage years, I've had group therapists. I've had an LDS family therapist. I've had 2 private therapists. I've been in group therapy that wasn't Mormon at the domestic violence shelter. I've been in the Mormon group therapy for women, adult survivors. What is it called? It's the one for women that's done by the LDS Family Social Services. So I've been in a lot of them, and unanimously they think that I must have been abused by my dad to have had what happened to me afterwards occur. Like sexually abused by my dad. And I don't remember very many things. Like my 16th birthday, I woke up and he was on me, and I was like that smothering feeling, and he was like, "Sweet 16 and never been kissed." And that suffocating feeling of like, just get the hell off of me and I'll do what you want me to do. So there was that. And then I didn't have regular periods ever. And they got concerned when I was like 14, 15 that I wasn't having them. So I was taken to my mom's OBGYN, and it's like blurry because it's all in pieces. And is that where that happened? Yeah. I don't remember much, except I think I was having my period and I wasn't told anything, like the stirrups or the speculum. I wasn't told any of it. So I got myself a book because the library was my safe place. My mother would let me go there. That was one place I was allowed. So I went back to my library, which looks like a castle. I love this library. And I go up to the garret, which the children's section was in the top. And I went and looked for the information, came home, was appalled. Went to my German teacher, not my mom, but my German teacher, crying, "Oh my gosh, we're going to, prudish. I can't believe I have to get naked from the waist down." So she's the one that comforted me. But when I went to this doctor, all I remember is I was having my period, and I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell anybody. My dad took me, not my mom. And there was blood. Blood all over the front of him, blood on his gloves, and a hissing sound like, shh. And sometimes I remember a green tank that was a helium tank, and sometimes I don't. And so I've told this on TikTok, and people are like, "Honey, that was an abortion, and you were getting an abortion." But I don't remember that. I just these weird pieces. And when my parents bought the daycare center, I was 15 or 16, and they sent me to this LDS doctor in town who was a jerk. Like, I spied on people. I'm a people watcher. And he would sit there with a hymn book or his Book of Mormon, and inside of it have a comic book or a novel. So I knew he was I didn't like him, because I was like, goody two-shoes. You're a bad boy. So I was sent alone to him, and his wife was a nurse who worked in the same office. And I was taken into his office, and he said, "Okay, I want you to look at the wall, and I'm going to sit behind you in this chair, and I want you to bend over." Okay, and I remember there was like a poke on my butt. I was like, "Give me a shot. You didn't tell me." I remember laying on the exam table on my belly, on my back, with the lights on, with the lights off, and pitch black, except for one of those big bright lights they do for pelvic exams. I can remember pain in both areas and being completely disoriented, and like I couldn't yell and I couldn't move, but I could hear and I could see. It was like I was just incapacitated with talking. And one of my counselors was an RN, and she's like, that sounds like ketamine. That sounds like a date rape drug. I can remember him pulling my pants up, and I was sitting there kind of like dazed out on this chair in his office, sitting there, I don't know how long. I remember his wife knocking on the door and him saying, "Go away!" and like a grunting because he was busy. And then they opened the door. He had me come out in the lobby, and like there's this room full of people in the lobby and the office person. And he's like, "You will never be able to have children." And I was mortified. I was like, this was supposed to be a physical to work at the daycare center. What is this? It was raining. I had to take myself there by myself on my bike, and everything burned. I had a banana seat on my bike, and everything hurt and burned, and I cried all the way home. And I went through the front door, and I said, "Dr. Campbell hurt me." And I tried to tell him what I remember. "What are you talking about? Dr. Campbell's a good man. What are you saying? This is crazy." And they shut it down. And my counselor thinks I just blocked it. I don't know.
Alana, you don't have to right now if this is not a good time for you, but do you want to speak for a moment about your experience of memory and how your memory of childhood events have affected your memory and recollections?
Yeah. So I personally don't have the greatest memories of my childhood sexual abuse. When I first, I think it was in my 20s when I first vocalised it, maybe older. Again, that shows you I'm not good at remembering things. Small little pieces, little flashes of memories of just very small things came to me, but I couldn't tell you what age I was when it started. I couldn't tell you what age I was when it stopped. I don't remember many details of what extent the abuse went to. I just know that it happened. I think I just got so used to growing up and trying to pretend it didn't happen that I guess it's almost like a filing drawer. You know, you just file it away at the back of your head and you just keep it there because you want to go on with your life believing it didn't happen to you, because you don't, at the age I was and, you know, being raised in a religion and things, you don't have the vocal ability to voice what's going on. I mean, when I spoke to my therapist and things, you know, I did ask, and I've spoke to my mum about this, you know, how did you not know? How could no one have seen? And she believes that possibly at times, because it's quite common with abuse victims, that they think in their mind that they are looking at your mum and you're making eyes, or you're trying to inwardly say, look at me, look what's happening to me. But you're not vocalising it, so they don't get it. But in your mind, you're thinking, why are you not seeing here what's happening to me? So, you know, I've told my mum, you know, I don't blame her in any way. I'm sure my mum, sorry. I didn't think I'd get to this point of crying again, because I'm probably overtired, to be fair. I don't blame my mum, because I'm sure she's blamed herself enough. And probably still, I haven't spoken to my mum about it for a while, but I think, you know, as a mother, you would carry that guilt for a long time of how could I not have known. But it's like we always say, you know, abuse victims are the life and soul of the party. They're loved by everyone. They're so out there. So no one would think for a moment they were the type of person to be doing that. And that's why I always say it's so important to protect your child from everyone. Like I said this a few weeks ago, and, you know, that I still struggle to trust my daughter, like when she's away at even families' houses, it's still niggling there that what if, because it was a family member who abused me, that it's still always there, but I also understand that she has to live her life as well. But my memories are so poor. And I was actually told, sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, I was actually told by an NHS worker, therapist, that she couldn't help me anymore because I couldn't remember my abuse. And I said, are you kidding? Like, why do you have to remember the abuse to get help with overcoming what you've been through? And I had a go at her and she said, okay, I'll keep you on then. But I didn't go back after that because I was like, what's the point? So obviously then years down the line, I got the right help. And again, the therapist that I seen at this new place said it doesn't matter what details you remember, you know, you remember it happened, and it's helping you to find strategies and ways to overcome and live with it better. You know, it's crazy.
And I think that even just a therapist suggesting that they can maybe help you get through that. Alana's trying to smash a fly.
It keeps flying at me, sorry.
It feels like another rejection when someone is saying, well, you know, if you can't do it, you feel like you're failing. And you know what it really strikes me during these conversations is there is so much pain and vulnerability, and the worst things that we, you know, the worst things that humans are capable of. We're talking about those things, and yet there are these funny moments and these, you know, these really powerfully connecting moments that are just really inspiring too, and finding humor and amongst these discussions, just it always amazes me.
Just quickly, if I could just say one wee small thing,
yeah,
just
please
before I forget. I was just thinking there, like we were talking about, you know, for myself, there. I mean, I don't know if you're the same, Katie, but for some times in my life, before I spoke out, and even after when I did speak out, there was still times in my life where I questioned myself. Did I make this up in my head? Did this actually happen? And so for someone who's supposed to be there to help you, to almost in a way, you can't remember your abuse, it plants that doubt again in your head, to say, did I, obviously through time, I knew I hadn't made it up in my head because 2 other family members, when I attempted suicide and my mum spoke to the family, it came out that they too were abused by the same man. So you then have that clarification that you didn't make it up in your head, but you think these people are supposed to help you, and they're planting more doubt in your head.
It also makes you doubt your therapist, though, because of this false memory syndrome thing. And I did get suspicious of my therapist from LDS Family Services. Like, how dare you? How dare you suggest that my father did this? Because I was close to my dad growing up, closer to my dad than my mom. And she had to work with me for a long time because I wouldn't even admit that my parents abused me. I mean, I was like 2 or 3 months of me like adamant, my parents are not abusive. What the hell? You're wrong. That was hard. And then when we got to this thing with Dr. Campbell, it's like, maybe you planted this in my head. Maybe you added details. And so I had a hard time sometimes trusting her, especially because she felt, because she had other clients who were the children of leaders in Michigan, who were female, Gen X, who all had the same weird memories. I did art in therapy, all did the same drawings. We all drew like a black circle in the chest. We all drew a glass box. She thought there was SRA of some kind. And the feeling was that, I'm not supposed to, she warned me not to speak publicly about this, but whatever.
Wow. It's your story. Come on.
She felt that what happened at Dr. Campbell's was like, I was the admission. That was my dad's admission fee into whatever club this was.
Okay.
And I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I guess I have an ex-Mormon shelf, and that's where I put that. So with this thing going on in Utah right now about an SRA investigation happening again, I don't know. But there are people who have memories like mine that don't make any sense, and there are all church members involved. This doctor was run out of town. Coldwater threw him out. The degree wasn't valid. He got it in Mexico, and they kicked him out of town. But I'm a liar?
Yeah. I want to speak a little bit about the ex-Mormon side of things and what's happening right now. First of all, can I just say, so Katie's sister is in the chat and has been a long time supporter of friend of the podcast here. We love you and we appreciate you and we see you each week that you're here and we believe you. And we send our love and our blessings. There's also an incredible amount of vulnerability and honesty being shared in the chat too. And we see you and we recognize that and we stand with you. I think the other thing that as you guys were speaking had really struck me. Now I'm stressing I haven't had the experiences that you guys have had, but when you talked about when you are earlier on, we got to join Nemo's show and we got to see this moment where a church leader was talking about how a stake is closing, but this is really wonderful and we're on the cusp of this really exciting time. And it was just so weird and gaslighty because clearly the church is doing the opposite of growing. It's in decline, and this is addressing that, but we can't say what's actually happening. What's actually happening is somehow it's growing. And so the church, we are used to every week this gaslighty thing happening. Now, if you're reporting abuse to whoever, or you are, like Alana said, if you're trying to sort of, you don't even know, you're trying to sort of give out other cues, you're used to being gaslit at church anyway. You're used to being told how things look, even when it might not be matching up with your lived experience. But then also when you try to speak out or you try to reach out or you try to emotionally connect, you're being told, no, that didn't happen. Of course you're going to doubt your memory. Of course you are. what happens then with the next part of your journey? Where do you stay in church? Do you report it to anyone who decides to take action?
The thing with Dr. Campbell, my dad was my branch president.
Yeah.
I was taken to see this doctor again at his house with my parents with me just because I was overreacting. I hated him. I hated that doctor.
You see, I'm aware that I'm asking a specific question here about, did you report this to church leaders? Any other religion that would be madness. I mean, I should be asking, did anybody report it to the police? So that, yeah, keep that in mind.
For CPS at that time.
And there are no safety nets. Wow.
And he's still a licensed counselor in my home state. Still. Side note. I grew up with a boy named Shane, who was my younger sister's age group. I remember being told as a teenager, no matter what Shane's been through, and his parents are so much more terrible than anything you've ever experienced. He loves his parents and he respects them, unlike you girls. And 2 years later, Shane hung himself. My father was his fucking counselor, and I blame my dad for Shane's death. Because I think what the message Shane got in the office was, you obey your parents. Your parents are always right. The same kind of crap we get in church. Shane wasn't believed either when Shane was acting out.
And I think that's how this plays out in a Mormon context. There is when you have a Mormon background, there are some uniquely Mormon things that add to the trauma, that compound the trauma that you're experiencing. Childhood abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse is a really traumatic thing, but you experience this in the backdrop, against the background of being gaslit and of shame-based teachings around modesty, and the fact that you, especially as a girl, you have your actions have consequences in the minds of others. You can affect how boys think about you. You may speak to a bishop about something and they can't recognize that you have actually experienced some kind of massive trauma. Do you receive any support from church leaders?
I think part of the problem, which I didn't realize existed until I was in the domestic violence shelter years later, is that there's no vocabulary. Boundaries? What are boundaries? All of this stuff about consent. Grooming? What's that? All of these, you don't have words for them. All you know is that your gut is saying, this is wrong. This doesn't feel right. Okay, programming says go to your church leaders. They will help you. It's like that sign in It's a Wonderful Life. Ask Dad. He knows. I mean, programming. I'm going to my church. They're going to help me. They're going to save me. Patriarchy, yay.
When did you leave the church? When was it enough for you?
Well, I've had a lot of faith crises, but I left on my 4th faith crisis. So
wow.
My first one was in my teenage years. Like I said, I had an inner goth, but I couldn't do the black makeup and the fingernails. So that's how I felt inside. But outside, I had to be like this thing which you see in evangelical Christianity, the smiling countenance, showing everybody the joy of the Lord. I mean, that's how I had to be. And I am a happy person, naturally, and I got criticized for that growing up. Too bubbly, too bouncy. And so I went to college. My freshman year, like I explained. One thing I forgot to tell you about is in January of that freshman year, December, a group of 4 of us were in my friend's dorm room watching movies. 2 girls, 2 boys. And we got snowed in. And I had no car, no driver's license, because that would make my parents' insurance go up. So I didn't have one. Not even had driver's ed training. Prepared for adulthood I was. And I didn't want to go out in the snow, which was rising, and it was already up to my knees. So we were mature young single adults. We were righteous. We were keeping our baptismal covenant. Nothing was going to happen. My friend lay down on her bunk, and the two boys were brothers. The other boy went on the bunk, and I laid on the floor by my friend. And then my date, I guess he was a date because those two were dating, was beside me. And I honestly was so stupid and naive that I thought we'd be safe. We're friends. I've been going to school with you guys for 6 months. And I woke up and he was on second base and heading for third base. And I fought him. You will not do this to me. And there's a tussle, and we woke up the whole room, and everybody's mad at me for throwing a stink and waking everybody up because we were up till 1 or 2 in the morning. And so I was pissed. I think it was like 3 or 4. Mad. Waited till it was daylight, and then waited in my hips for the snow, because it hadn't been plowed yet, back to my dorm. Marched up to my 4th floor dorm room, picked up my phone, and called my bishop to report on this jerk. I turned him in. He was supposed to go on his mission. He was delayed for 6 months, and the family blamed me for being the temptress. And so that happened. I moved in with the Goodwins over the summer, and he starts grooming me. I didn't know what that was at the time. But, first of all, since I didn't have a car, he worked right near the campus. He would drive me in his truck to school and back, and his wife would work and take her car back and forth. So I was alone with him for a 35-minute drive one way in the morning and on the way back every day. And so we were friends. He became like a father figure to me. And I told him about my life. I told him about my unhappy childhood. I told him all these things. And yeah, he was the creepy guy, but he also kind of became my friend. He had his own story of victimhood, things that I could feel sorry for. Like, he was one of the babies that was put in an incubator, and he'd been blinded by the pure oxygen. He'd been bullied and picked on. His dad had been abusive to him. So we bonded on this common ground of both having experienced unkind Mormon upbringing. But he started to do things like, I dare you to go skinny dipping with me. Just things that were completely fucking inappropriate. But he was my pal. I mean, I hadn't even had friends over very much growing up because that was so restricted. I mean, I had no dating, no social skills. I was a complete target, man. I mean, gold mine for this fucker. And he knew it. I let him read my journals so he could understand me better. I mean, just so stupid. And then I decided to stay with them for the sophomore school year because, I mean, it was sweet. I didn't have to deal with dorm life. The food was better. It pissed my parents off. What was there not to love? And it just started slowly going like, would you sit on my lap while we watch this TV show? Just slowly, things that, I mean, my parents weren't affectionate. And so I was like, okay, we'll sit and cuddle. No idea this was grooming. I think I was love starved. And then we get to November. I'm trying to think what year this is now. We get to October, and Liz, his wife, had her 50th birthday party. And they put me in this dress that she had worn when he was dating her. And he dressed up like a riverboat gambler, and we were taken to this Halloween party that the whole entire world was at, and everybody knew what I was wearing. And the bishop was dressed as the devil with red face and everything. It was just freaky Halloween party from wherever. In November, it was getting scary. And he was starting to tell me, don't go to the church. We're in control of this. This is a friendship. If you tell them anything, they're going to say this is a dirty affair. It's not. But I'm like, you keep advancing things. I tell you, no, stop. And you keep doing things. Like he would hang outside the shower where I was showering. Like the door, he'd get the little pin and unlock the door and lean into here in the shower and go, just creepy things. And so I was like, okay, I want to preserve this friendship. It's like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm going to go to somebody. I'm going to tell him, just make him stop the bad stuff. He's my friend. He's my father. That's what I thought of him as. So it was Thanksgiving weekend. I was like, I need to repent or whatever this is. Blaming myself. My bishop wasn't there. He was away for Thanksgiving. I had no car. I had no way to get to the church. So we'd gone for a meeting for, I think it was a Sunday. And I'll use his real name. Wes was in his bishopric meetings. And so I literally ran for my life across the church gym, through the annex, through to the stake offices. I'm going to tell the stake president. I get to the stake president's office. Okay. And I tell him, okay, I got the situation. I don't want to tell you who it is because, it's their business to come to you. This is what's going on. He looks across the desk to me. So sad. And he says, it's Brother Goodwin, isn't it? I didn't mean to get him in trouble, and I'm like, yeah. He had been the bishop when Brother Goodwin, like 2 or 3 years beforehand, had confessed to committing adultery on his wife during their first year of marriage with a next door neighbor who was LDS, Temple endowed too. And this bitch had gone to my childhood branch with her husband and preached, and I hated them. They were like Tammy Faye Baker, make up the hair. I hated her guts. And to find out this was the woman. Well, anyway, I'm in this office in shock because President Riemann gets up from his desk, goes to the state clerk and says, go find Brother Goodwin. Bring him to the office. Oh my God, they're bringing him in the office right now? Freaking out. They bring him into the office. The door opens and Wes comes in there like, you are dead. You are so in trouble, Katie. Looking at me with glare. And they talk amongst themselves, and he's like, yes, I know it was getting out of control, blah, 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 but, we can handle it. Don't tell Liz. So the two men are sitting here discussing everything as if I'm invisible, and they mutually decide, we won't tell Liz. We're going to send her back home so nobody suspects. And we're going to trust you, Wes, to control your fucking self. I was 19 years old. He was in his late 40s. I think, yeah, he was 28 years older than me. So add the math, I can't think right now. And I was shocked and appalled. I'd expected him to say, I'm going to take you home with me. You don't have to go back. And they're both like in front of me agreeing to something. It's like, okay, follow your leaders, I guess I'm going to go home with him. And I can't tell Liz because I was afraid of Liz. And I loved her, but I was afraid because she had a temper. I was intimidated by her, a lot like my mom. And the reason, partly I'd gone to the church is because I was too afraid to go to her. She was scary when she was mad. So I go home in November, and the next day it keeps launching and launching bad. I go home for Christmas. I'm crying. I'm missing him. Everything he told me that the church would say is true. He must really love me. We must really be in love. The church really must not understand because that's what he's telling me. Go back in January. And the other thing is they weren't sleeping together. She slept on the main floor. He slept upstairs where my bedroom was and the master bedroom was. Smart? Not? Nobody warned me? People in this stake knew about this affair. He'd also had 2 foster sons and a big brother, and both foster sons left. Like, no red flags, you fucking idiots! Nothing! So you're gonna send me there? So February comes, and he's like, Valentine's Day, pressing on me. I'm like, that's the day for you and Liz. I'm seeing the bishop still and having to like lie because don't tell them what's happening because they'll tell Liz and my marriage will be ruined, and this is like the best calling I've ever had in the church, like, and they forgave me for my affair, and you'll ruin me if you tell them what's happening. All this is put on me. And the bishop in the meantime is like, I knew you were a slut. I knew ever since that thing happened in Western, in the dorms, what kind of girl you were. You're ruining my ward. You're ruining my bishopric. You're ruining my Relief Society presidency. You homewrecker. I can remember, because I had no car, to counsel me. He had to pick me up at school, and he put his briefcase in between us in the truck because it was like one seat. You don't have a back seat. And I was like, what, do you think I'm going to jump over the briefcase and hump you? Like, am I dangerous? I mean, it was so insulting and coming from all directions that I must be this toxic femme, this it's like, so I go to this bishop, and a lot of times I'd meet with them, there'd be him, because I guess I must be too fucking dangerous for one man by themselves with my sexy powers. It'd be him, another one of the counselors, sometimes a high councilman, sometimes not, never the stake president. The stake president dropped like a hot potato. Chuck Raymond, you betrayed me. You could have saved me that night, and I will not forgive you. And I wrote you a letter, and you never responded. Anyway, then they brought in a guy from LDS Family Services, and he said, well, I know from my vast experience that with your parents both being stake leaders, there's no way you were ever abused. Because the Lord wouldn't have put them in those positions of power and responsibility if they'd have been abusive. So you're lying. Because that was what I was telling him. I'm about my abuse and how I needed this care and how he had preyed on it. Nope. I'm a manipulative vixen homewrecker liar. So I'm still talking with the bishop one night. It was Valentine's Day. I don't know why. And he looks across the table at me. He reads to me the scripture. Sometimes I remember what the scripture is, and right now I can't. As a man thinketh, so is he. If you've thought it, you've done it. I'm like, but I didn't do it. I've been fighting him off all these months. It's getting really close. Then I'm going to fall. If you've thought it, you've done it. You mean I've already done it? I've been protecting my virginity all this time, and I'm not a virgin? You're not a virgin. So I went home and I fucking gave up. Can I do it? Can I do it now? And so that was my first time. Just giving up. Just like when I was being suffocated, if you give in and give up, it'll get over. And so I finally moved out in May because the church was getting on him. He moved me into this dorm where nobody knew where I was. My family didn't know where I was. It was across the street from my stake president's house. I could see it from the window. He would visit me from work to check on me and get a quick fuck during his lunch hour. October rolls around. I get this intercom buzzer. It's him. We're here. We're here. Oh my God, Liz is with him. So I run around my room hiding all the stuff. Because as far as I know, she still doesn't know. They bring me downstairs to the lobby and tell me that they're getting a divorce, which is a shock to me because the whole time he's like, I'm trying to save my marriage. I'm trying to. Nope. He's decided to divorce her because he knows that he can get me to marry him. And she tells me with tears streaming out her face, I think there's another woman. Do you know who it might be? And I'm like, I was hysterical. I was crying. I was laughing. It was like one of the worst moments of my entire life. It was a nightmare. She somehow finds out that it's me. A little bit later, every time she sees me, she screams out her car window, "Fuck our tribe, whore, bitch!" Every time I see her, people at church. I haven't been going to church. The following January, we're excommunicated. My sin was adultery. His sin was adultery. Now, this is a second time for him. Why was he only disfellowshipped the first time? Even though the confession was delayed by 20 years because he sat on it, he should have been fucking excommunicated. That's what the scriptures say. Why aren't you LDS leaders following your own things? We don't want to ruin a good man's life. What about a good woman's life? What about a good child's life? Why is it always the man? And by the way, fornication is what happened, or grooming. And it wasn't even fornication, it was abuse. But I got the big scarlet letter. I was told not to attend my bishop's court by Wes because they're just going to misjudge our love and make you feel bad. But he went to his state court, and I found out from people later that he blamed me. She tempted me. She went after me. I'm so helpless, and look at me. I'm ugly. He is. He's fucking ugly. How could I do that? I'm this weak, blind man. Look at her. And so, I mean, I had nothing left but him. The church threw me out to my abuser. You know, that whole thing, that talk that was given about stay in the boat with the fishermen. You threw me back in the water. So I ended up being married to him for like, officially it's 8 years because the divorce took so long. And I never wanted to marry him. We were married by that stake president. And so, you know, with all the psychological abuse I had growing up, it was like, you love me, don't you? You know, it's the same kind of thing you did as a kid. Well, mom says it's right, right? So that's kind of what the dynamic was. Is you said what you had to say because that was how you survived. Or, you know, you even started to think, I must be in love with him. I mean, and everything he says the church is going to react like they did. Well, duh. He was older than me. He knew. He knew. So the bishop who we worked with after we got married had been my institute teacher. And I think I call him Richard. I'm not going to use his last name if I can help it. He was one of the people I went to about what was going on with Wes and said, what do I do? I don't think this is normal, right? Like men don't act like this with guests in their home, right? And he's like, I think you should go to the church leaders. So then he ends up being my bishop, and I ended up making him the new father figure. I would come to him with my stories, with my crying, with my confidences of things I could never say about what was happening in the marriage. And it was abusive, but it was like his goal was to have the happily ever after, that we would get married in the temple. When the kids started coming, everybody thought it was a miracle, which was calculated by Wes. After all these years of childlessness, lo and behold, miracle baby! Well, we used artificial donor insemination, which he hadn't allowed his first wife to do. It was like I was his revenge on her for punishing him for being mad that he cheated on her. I didn't know I was being used as a tool. I was whipped and tossed here. And so I started being concerned when, like, I would walk in on him changing my daughter's diaper, and he's, like, in there.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I'm blind, and I've never seen you. I have to. And I'm like, you told me that you were so interested in female anatomy that when you were 5 years old, you were opening up the stalls of the girls' bathrooms hoping to catch a glimpse of their pee-pee. You told me that you masturbated so bad that you had blisters on your dick and your uncle called you buckskin. So how come it's like suddenly like weaponized naivete? After I had my first child, like I bled down my legs, and he sat with the baby so I could make him dinner. I mean, it was like total patriarchal heaven for him. But I started to wake up because I'd had a dream about my kids, and I knew this wasn't the guy I was supposed to marry. It was like this constant dream I had for a week every night when I was a teenager. I knew I wasn't supposed to marry. I knew he wasn't supposed to be their dad. So I was wrecking whatever the universe had for me. And when she came out, I used natural childbirth. And that was empowering. Changed my life. I think I would have been ruined if I hadn't had natural childbirth. It was the most empowering thing of my life. And when she comes out and the nurse hands the baby to him, he looks at her and he says, do you think she'll love me? I'm like, you totally gotta be fucking kidding me? Do you think she'll love you? I think fathers are supposed to say, here's the words, let's put them in your mouth, dumbass. Do you think she'll know I love you? I love her, I mean, you know, like as a father. So, because of my dream that I'd seen these kids, I knew there was another one. I knew it would be a boy. I had the second kid. The abuse was getting bad enough because, like, there was another incident with the bathtub where I thought maybe she'd been molested. We took her to the pediatrician. He said it was the bubble bath. One night when she came downstairs crying because she had an ouchie pee-pee from riding Papa's camel, that was another time I left. The church made me come back. And I'm like, I'm always wrong. I'm always wrong. But I finally left because I was afraid that he'd promised. I told him, if you ever abuse the kids, I'm leaving. I told him, before we even married. And that was the first instance of physical abuse I actually witnessed. I knew it was real. I knew that this was the beginning of it going bad. I took the kids and I left. And I fled back to my hometown. Much to my parents' credit, they helped me leave. But I went from my second abuser back to my first. Loaded up a trailer with what we could. Hid in my sister's basement. My younger sister, Allison. And he came pounding on doors. Where is she? Hunting me. And I had to live in that county for 3 days before the DV shelter would come, or would let me in. I had to be a resident. So my daughter was 3 and my son was 18 months. And we're in the shelter, only a couple days. He tries to push his way in. They call the state police because it's thank God I had the domestic violence shelter. And he has to leave. But none of this seemed to matter in the court. I mean, I had to learn the hard way that the friend of the court in America is not your friend. It's the court's friend. I had to learn that because of Woody Allen's effect on the American court system, which still exists, they don't believe abuse stories. They think it's weaponized. It was hellish. It was dragged out for 13 months when it should be 6. People in the church sided with him. His whole entire high priest quorum showed up for him. I mean, I was in my home state, Lansing Stake, and all this had happened in Kalamazoo Stake. Kalamazoo Stake always stood by him. And my own home state, the people who know me since I was a little girl were so good to me. Like, my friend Sherry watched my kids so I could go to counseling. People had me over for dinner. We got Christmas gifts. I mean, that's where Mormonism works. And so after the divorce was finally finalized, and there was the constant worry when they're going away. Oh yeah, I had supervised visitation because I was believed enough. And because of the testimony of the high priest, I lost the supervised visitation. Oh my God. We were supposed to take her into the office where my dad worked for mental health counseling and have her see a child therapist. This child therapist was fucking deaf. I mean, I'm not saying I'm, anti-deaf, but to be a child therapist with like 2 hearing aids on, who mishears everything she says, why are you here? Get a different job. Don't do this with kids. But they couldn't be prejudiced, had to keep her on. But she misquoted my daughter all the time. Or was it my son? We brought my son in more than my daughter. There was one day when she didn't want to go. She was like scared. And she's like, I don't want to go. I'm so afraid Papa's going to be there because we're having to see him. And he found out about it. He wanted to be there too. Like, who's going to confess to this in front of your abuser? So I trusted my daughter's intuition. One gift I've gotten from my abusive childhood is if a child says they're not comfortable, you listen, you respect them. They are little people. They are full-blown spirits. If you believe anything about Mormon doctrine, they had eons in heaven with Heavenly Father. They were full-grown. And you expect to talk down to them and ignore them and treat them like stupids. I never treated my kids that way, and I've been criticized in the church more for that. You'd speak to your kids like they're adults, like they're equals. Yes, I do. Fuck you. So I walk into this office and I go around the corner and there he is. Where's Anna? She's not here. He was so mad, but he pulled shit like that all the time. And, I learned to rely on my own spirituality, which the church told me didn't exist. How can you have revelation outside of the channels? If stake president and the bishop and blah, 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 blah thinks you should be married to him and stay with him, then your revelation must be faulty. Well, my revelation proved right over and over. So whatever that voice is, the universe, a goddess, the force of love, I learned to listen to it. And as I matured in the church more, in my marriage with my second husband, I was hated more for that than anything else. Was that I really had a testimony that there was a communication, that there was guidance, that the Holy Ghost did work, or whatever it's called, that you could tap into it. And I was hated for it. It was like almost a jealousy. But I learned this because of having nothing else. You know, God is still there in the desert. And maybe that's a good thing, because you find out who everybody else is, and it's bullshit. You don't need a mediator. When you're all alone and nobody cares, he does. And so I still have faith in that God, and it's not Mormon God. So anyway, the divorce was ended. I decided to go to college and get my master's degree in social work. I carried a 4.0 and finished the first semester, but when I went to Lansing, I got accepted at Michigan State. I met Jeff. I hadn't expected it, but I had. I'd been studying my scriptures one day and reading about Rosh Hashanah, which fascinated me. And this voice said to me, "You'll have your own Rosh Hashanah, and everything will be taken care of. Your bridegroom will come." And I had an Amish friend that I'd met through my sheep, because we had sheep. Wes and I had a little Shetland sheep farm. And I loved this family. I loved their simplicity. And I'd learned about her marriage. They'd had a literal shofar blown, and he'd come for her. And I thought this marriage was beautiful. And I'd been studying it because of her. Marion, if you're listening, I love you. And the voice said, and I said to the voice, okay, someday. Yeah, I know. No, this year on Rosh Hashanah, which happened to be my birthday. So I'm like, okay, putting that on the shelf, because I might be deluding myself. But I believed it enough so that I looked for it. I hoped that it was true. So I go and move to Michigan State, move into this apartment. My kids are on visitation. I'm worried about them because I didn't get any contact during visitation at all. Somehow the court didn't let it happen, so I'm worried that my daughter's going to be molested. It was a constant worry the whole time I had to go. And I'm unpacking. It's like in the middle of summer, and I get this voice. Go to the young single adult picnic. Go to the young single, bugging me. And so finally I went, so I'm like, shut up! I'm going! and so that's when I met him. I met Jeff. And it was a whirlwind. We went to the temple, walked in as friends, left engaged. We're married the next month. And I knew when we walked out of that temple, that voice in my head said, see, I keep my promises. And it's been that way. It's been that way with him. And, I had church leaders skeptical. That's nothing to do with Mormonism, but that's the God. And so, throughout this marriage with Jeff, we've had to deal with my abuser because he had legal rights. The 2 children born during the marriage were artificial insemination, but American law recognizes him as the dad. It was awful because the church treated him like he was the dad with all these rights, and the kids got lectured about, you should respect your father. The family tree lessons at church, my kids were like, I got half a tree. It's like chainsaw down the middle because I'm not putting him there. He's not my dad. And I chose to tell my kids the truth in the beginning. No lying. If I'm going to do this, Wes, you have to promise that they are never told that you're their dad, because that's a lie. So after the divorce, he told them he was their dad. He told the church he was their dad. I had to deal with all this crap all the time from church leaders lecturing me. And I'm like, he's an abuser. No, he's not. No church leaders ever believed you. No courts ever believed you. It was a nightmare. Having to deal with him at baptisms, and so that's what I've had to deal with the church. And I've only been free to talk about it since 2018 when my son turned 18. And he's still alive. He's been a temple worker, veil worker at Mount Rakura Temple. He's on wife number 5. The third wife, the one after me, this is the same stake, Kalamazoo stake. She does a detective to go investigate him because she's been married multiple times, wants to make sure she doesn't make a mistake. She finds nothing on him. Of course she finds nothing on him because the church protected him. So she's a nurse. She goes to work the night shift, and he starts doing the bathroom thing. All the same stuff he was doing with me. Can I like listening? And she's creeped out. I mean, she's like street smart. And she's like, screw this. Goodbye. She jumps out of the window in her bathrobe, calls her mom on the phone. The mom goes to the church. The church does nothing. She stays long enough to get her affairs in order, and she does the high bitch move of leaving him on Christmas Day. Takes her kids and walks out. So early in my marriage to Jeff, I think I was like 2 or 3 years in, the church decides that they want to reinstate Wes from his excommunication. I'd already been reinstated, of course. And I had a really good stake president that was really compassionate, the best leader I've ever had. And I'm like, definitely not. Definitely not. This is not good. I have kids still. No. So I wrote a 40-page letter. Told my story. And, a lot of it was mixed. I haven't read it. I have a copy of it, but I haven't touched it since I wrote it. I'm afraid to look at it now because I'm sure it would be TBM and self-blaming and shit. But still, it was, don't do this. And here's why. Blah, blah, blah. I think I might have like ADHD or be neurodivergent. I have to get diagnosed, but I keep seeing TikTok and it's like, maybe all this like extra detail thing kind of means maybe I'm neurodivergent. I don't know. So they send a letter back and say, she is the only ex-wife who's saying no. So Liz must have said yes, and Kimberly must have said yes, and his current wife, Shirley, at the time. You're the one in sin. You can't forgive him. And I'm like, even Kimberly? Kimberly has a daughter. I mean, I'm the only one. So I said no. They waited 2 months and sent another letter from the First Presidency's office. Will you not reconsider? And so I was told I had the greater sin. And so I'm like, I don't trust him, but I trust you, the first fucking presidency of this fucking church. I find out after the fact that Kim was told the same thing. She was the only holdout. I imagine Liz was probably told the same. Bishop Poppenfuss, wherever you are in Utah. So he gets back into church. He found himself a sick widow who had never been married in the temple. She wants to be sealed in the temple before she dies. He had this plan to go out to Utah and do this whole thing when we were married. Let's go to Utah where it will be easier to get back in the church. Because there was a guy in our stake who cheated on his wife and they kept him excommunicated, and it had been like 25 years and he didn't want to be another case. Brother Q, people in Kalamazoo, if you know who that is. So he went to Utah and he was in Lake Flynn. And women, if you have a gut reaction, listen. Because a day after Shirley married Wes, she called me on the phone in a panic. My oldest son, who's 17 almost, was a baby then. Oh my gosh, I think I made a mistake. Please tell me everything. Tell me what happened to you. So I told her. She hated me more than any other wife. You lied to me. That never happened. He's a good man. Were you so desperate for dick or for ceilings that you just ignored everything? God. So, when my son was 14, 14-year-olds go through their thing. He started the cloak and dagger with my boy. There was a judgment of divorce saying that, I have to do another one before this. My 12-year-old daughter. We believe he was grooming her. There were no locks on her bedroom door. She had her own bedroom, and her own bathroom connected to the bedroom, and he would use that one instead of his on another floor. We could see the same patterns again of the sexual grooming. And my husband Yeah. Got on the phone and said, you get her a fucking lock on that door. We found out he'd been showing her porn, grooming her at their house. We went to the state police. Wes turned it around and said that Jeff was showing her porn. We were hauled into the Michigan State Police. My children were interviewed, and the cops came out furious. Your kids know too much. They know words like vagina, penis, vulva. They know about the circumstances of your divorce. Are you sure you're not breaking the judgment of divorce? Because you're supposed to only say good things about your ex-husband. I will protect my children by telling the truth. Send me to jail. Because the only reason he's still alive and not dead, because I killed him myself, is I would be in prison and they would be alone. Otherwise, he'd be dead already. And I learned to protect myself and advocate for myself by protecting my kids. And it shouldn't have been that way. It shouldn't have. And so that case went nowhere. They dropped it because they thought it was too muddied. Too much he said, she said. But yeah, I remember being bawled out that my daughter knew what a vagina was. That's a bad thing? What should we call it? A wee-wee? So I think that saved us. And she had great shame. And this is her own story to tell, but the Mormon bishop who handled that scarred her horribly, terribly. So that's 2 generations, folks. 2 generations of inept, untrained, cruel Mormon priesthood leadership and revelation and counseling. And so then my son was 14 and my ex was grooming him. They were playing cloak and dagger. The judgment of divorce said, because I fought against it, no digital contact, phone only. Because I knew he tried to give me a computer, a brand new computer. Wouldn't it be great? We could still have family home meeting and family prayer. I could call him every day. No, that's why we get divorced. So I wouldn't take this Trojan horse in my house. So he got my boy a cell phone. And we knew something was going on. My husband works in telecommunications. Oh, I love you, Anna. Where was I? So I lost my train of thought. Tell me where I was. I forgot.
Alana, your mic is really, really quiet. Okay, so yeah, it was a cell phone that you're...
Oh, yeah. So we gave my kid the cell phone. They're playing cloak and dagger. I'm supposed to meet with this mediator in Montana. And the Montana court's like, what is this? What is this? This is a Michigan case? You're in Montana. He's in Utah. Out of my court. And the mediator was prejudiced when she walked in and said, he's 14. Legally, he can go with him. We didn't know until that moment that he had been playing us. We paid $4,000, got a useless defense, and he walked out the door. And I felt, don't think I don't feel guilt for what happened with Liz. I felt like it was justice that he left us on her birthday. I mean, that's how much I blame myself and internalize the guilt and the shame and the blame. Well, this must be God's justice. Because I felt so betrayed by my son, and I had betrayed her. So here's what it feels like, Katie. And I can remember crying, just bawling in Sunday school, because like the story of Abraham having to sacrifice his son to God, I felt like I was having to sacrifice my son to Satan. Like, I have to hand him over to the worst person in the world that I could give him to. And nobody cared. Everybody judged. And there was whispering and rumors. Again, I mean, having been through an excommunication, the cruelest thing is Mormon judgment. I had a Jehovah's Witness friend, Jonas. He has a YouTube channel, goat-like personality. And he said, you Mormons have it worse. Because when we get shunned, it's over. It's like death. But you Mormons have to have it go yo-yo. In and out, up and down, back and forth. And your shunning is done to your face. You're supposed to act like you don't care that when you walk down a church hallway, people turn on their heels and walk away. You're supposed to act like you don't care when primary children know not to talk to you. And see, a lot of this was happening in Michigan to my kids. A lot of this reverb from people judging me, telling their children that my kids got shit in primary. And so we wanted a new start. That's why we moved out west, one reason. So I'm in this board, and he's taking my son, and fast forward, he kicks my boy out of the house just like he kicked Alan out of the house, foster kid. He was making my kid start paying rent and buy his own food. So Will came home. My son came home and had his own pizza, went to the bathroom and came out, and Wes is eating his pizza. He's like, I bought that pizza. That's my dinner. Well, I've given you a lot more than this, and I was hungry. They get in a fight. He kicks my son out on the street. So he ended up being taken in by a friend's family. And the church sees this. I mean, I'm calling the bishops. I'm frantic. And this boy did not survive LDS ecclesiastical or sexual abuse. He went to Boy Scout camp. Woke up on his bunk with a dick down his face. It was a priest in his quorum. My ex, supposedly, this is from my son, went and told the bishop. They let the boy keep serving sacrament. They sent him on his mission. My boy quit attending church, and that led to his faith crisis, which led to ours. He introduced us to the CES letter, and I read it to try and save him. Good job, Mormon Church.
Yeah. I know that this question will be painful. We have kind of, we've had messaging, and so I'm really aware that if you're not ready to go here, that's okay. Why do you care about what the church is doing?
Because it's going to keep happening if I don't open my mouth. Like I said, I've had many faith crises. The third one happened when Will left, and the fourth one happened on the morning I woke up and found out about McKenna Denson and the MTC president. That voice that to me is truth and doesn't talk to me through a bishop's mouth said, if you look, this is a warning, if you look at Sam Young and what he's doing, you will face that switch point that President Hinckley talks about in that famous talk about the rail. That switch, that if you pull it and it goes that way, you'll end up with a train in Pennsylvania, or you'll end up with a train in California. If you look, you will have the switch pulled. So I avoided it. I didn't want. I've excommunicated. I've been through that hell. I got remarried. I did it right. I did it in the temple. Everything was great. And I was like, church broke and yay. But when I found out that this had happened to McKenna at the MTC, and it was like so much like what happened to me, and she'd been gaslit, I peeked. I opened Pandora's box and I went to protectldeschildren.org. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. And why didn't I stay silent? Because, oh my gosh, because of that song from Les Mis. Who am I? If I stay silent, I am damned. Oh, if I speak, I am condemned. If I stay silent, I am damned. Condemned by the church or damned by God. And this is the guy, help me find my husband, help me have the happy. And my husband, Jeff, has been a big part of this healing story because he knows how to love. And his kindness was just like baffling and still is baffling. I've stopped now, but it was like, are you mad at me? Are you okay? I'm always like, do you still love me?
Reassurance.
Always. And it's always like, Katie, I've seen you covered in blood and poop, delivering children. I love you. I'm here. I'm not leaving. So it's always like reassurance. But I needed to be like that for somebody else because I realized when I was reading Protect Every Child stuff that it was happening. It was happening over and over and over and over and over and over. And I've been lied to. And these mouthpieces of the Lord were inept idiots and they were damaging people. And I felt really, truly like if there is an afterlife, I would go to hell or oblivion or huge condemnation if I didn't use my voice and tell my story to stop this thing. We're getting back to my angry. It's indignation. Call it righteous or unrighteous indignation. I don't give a fuck. But it's indignation. Stop it in this generation. Stop it now. If I die tomorrow and I really feel like this, I have an autoimmune disease. This day, this podcast is why I'm here on this earth. Latter-day Saints and everybody in general in society, stop it now. Stop it. Advocate for your kids. We quit attending. The church is not a safe place. And, it's a real shame that I found out it wasn't true. There's some believers among the two of you, but that's made it easier and harder. Because I think it would hurt more if it was true and I had to walk away. But in some ways, it's like validating, like, oh, what the fuck? It's all just crap anyway. But yeah, this is Joseph Smith's similarities in behavior to Wes. We're horrifying. We're terrible. Fanny Alger, the Partridge Sisters, the Lawrence sisters. Don't tell me this wasn't sexual grooming by a man in authority over a young girl. It was like replayed and replayed and replayed. And it's going to replay if we keep saying, oh, that's just a bad apple. That's a drop in the bucket. No, people, it's epidemic. If anything I've learned volunteering for Protect Every Child, it's not. We are as bad as the Catholic Church or worse.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why looking at church history can be so traumatic for people is they see patterns in church history that, this is what it looks like. Absolutely. Not only did you peek at what was it initially called, Sam? Yeah, it was Protect
LDS Children.
Yeah, he's got two organizations. It's Protect the Children. It's a nonprofit in Texas, but one is Protect LDS Children, and then it morphed into Protect Every Child, kind of as a result of his excommunication. Because
I keep calling it the wrong name, so yeah, thank you for clarifying it. But you did more than peek. You read the stories and you kept reading, and you decided to share your own story. What's the number? I have it written here, but
622.
Yeah.
And people say, link to it. That's all your story. No, it's not. You've heard a lot more of it now.
And so your story went in a binder with all of the other stories and was delivered to church headquarters. What was that like? Was your story printed? That was your, or did that come later?
I gave my story after the fact of that.
After, okay. I think the power of those stories being hand delivered was huge, and to see the support and the dignity given to your stories. While most members here in the UK certainly had no idea this was happening, had absolutely no idea. And so I had my best friend who was just so distressed that we're talking about this epidemic of abuse and mishandling of abuse and covering up of abuse. These are facts. This is not someone's perspective. Those things happened and continue to happen. And to see how Alana was completely traumatized by this was just absolutely, it was horrible to watch. It was just horrible to watch. And then, as you say, McKenna's story came out and other stories continue to come out. Tell me a bit about your involvement with, you continue to be involved with supporting Sam's organization. Will you talk a little bit about that?
So we quit attending January 2019. My daughter was serving a full-time mission. We told her on our mission and began her story, but things did not go well with her mission president. I knew I had to get involved. I was looking at the website, and it seemed like I knew the march was coming in October, and it was like Greek, like, is this going to happen? And it was like, So I talked to Jeff about it and decided, even if I risk my membership, I'm going to get involved with Protect Every Child. And I called Sam on the 4th of July, Independence Day. And I guess it's still part of my upbringing that I'm shocked when people think I'm a good person. Like the TikTok following, shocking. Or that I'm trustworthy. That's the most important thing. It's better to be trusted than loved, in my opinion. And Sam interviewed me and took me on. And I'm like, really? I'm a complete stranger. You're giving me passwords to things. And you're good with this. But he never seemed to doubt me. And I went back and looked at our texts because they're still there. It was ball rolling. And we worked synergistically, texting and calling, and I didn't meet him until the March. And he's been a good friend. I worked really hard for that March. People don't know how hard, and I'm not going to blow my own horn. But the morning after the March, I was supposed to meet Brian Bessie. I wanted to, because they were going to go outside the conference center and talk about Samuel. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and my son, we were in the camper, was ice cold. Ice cold. I thought he was dead. My little boy. And so that was like a major freak out. I didn't end up making it. And it just kind of collapsed. I think my Hashimoto's kicked in. I was working sometimes 24 hours not sleeping. And so I kind of backed away from Protect Every Child. And Sam asked me to come back actively the following year and said, I will pay you. So you can be a contract worker. So he started paying me, and then he retroactively paid me for all my work that was valuable to him. It means a lot. And he remembers us at Christmas too. And sometimes I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just imagining it, that I get resentment from people. Like, who is she? March in there. I sometimes feel that vibe. This is not the sincerity of my heart. I didn't do this to get notoriety or to coattail Sam. I'm doing this because I care about it. I mean, it is not fun being an admin and finding another fucker, another headline. Do I like this? Do I like? No, and it's, sometimes it is triggering, and sometimes I wonder if I should stop. In order to heal it, I should just. Dana did what I sometimes want to do, just walk away and be totally done. But if I do that, some other little girl is not going to be rescued. When she goes to her stake president and she says what's happening, the same thing's going to happen to her. And so that's why I do it. I love that story about it mattered to that starfish. And don't read the stupid ice cream one online. Find the one by Lauren Isley. The full story. I love that story, and I believe that story. I've loved it since I was a kid. My dad told me that story. And that's one thing I did get from my dad, is the importance of the one. He'd bring home kids from the center. And so you look like, they'd say, you look like my mom. And disabled people act a certain way. And I was scared. And I learned that they're just people. They're just people. And there's nothing wrong. And during a really hard part of the divorce, when I was in the shelter house, I got a mailing from the Special Olympics. And the motto, let me win, but if I can't win, let me be valiant. I put that on my fridge because if a special kid can try, then I can. And so that's something I got from my dad. Everybody's valuable.
Katie, this is something I was thinking about in relation to both you and Dana, because of what both you do now, both what you have done, what you do now, and what you will continue to do in the future. Because especially, you know, as Dana's just figuring all of that out. So we spoke to Dana on our previous episode, which we'll link to in the show notes. But I wanted to tell you guys this, that Alana will remember. I was so mad at Sam Young at first. I was so mad at him because he was listened to. You know, I'm like, all of these women who have tried to speak up and who have tried to talk, all of these survivors, in the September 6th, you know, all the great work that's been done trying to address this in the church. And here comes this Mormon ex-bishop, you know, this white guy who, now you're going to open your mouth with all the authority that you have had and all your privilege. And now people are listening to you. And I was really mad at Sam because of that. And yet, Alana has just gone on a moth hunting mission. This is hysterical. Just in case you see swiping happening, and she's bumped her camera again. So this is gold. But yeah, I was really mad at Sam because of that. And we've got Sam coming on the show this Wednesday. The work that he has done in amplifying the voices of those who have been affected by this, and amplifying the voices of the vulnerable, and making sure that you were the fact that it's you he chose to fulfill that role, I think, as Dana said, speaks so much to his character. I think that's very, very cool of him, that he's using his privilege to amplify and lift. So thank you so much for all that you do, Sam. And it lets you guys decide how you're going to heal, about how you decide to engage with the community that we're talking about. I have so many more questions, but it's we're really struggling for time here. One thing that I really want to emphasize to our audience, my husband actually was one of the biggest commenters about this to me, but, you know, just from the comments tonight too, people want to make sure that you're going to be okay and that you're going to be supported after this conversation. And similarly with Dana, I want to just, you know, make sure that everyone knows that we're friends with you guys. We love you guys. We continue to speak with you guys, that you're part of our story and our journey, and we're so honored to be a little part of yours. You've got someone with you, right?
Did you see me get a tissue? My husband was over here
I
in the kitchen, like, get a tissue, honey.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm getting French fries when this is done because I love them. Yeah.
I want to. Okay, this is really mean of me, but I want to unleash angry Greenwich spinach for a second. So, and we are going to link to your amazing TikTok channel, which is just so badass. But yeah, I'm going to talk about something as the final point here, and hopefully you'll come back on again because we've got more things to talk about. Okay, so we have had to be very careful about the language that we use around this subject. And Alana and I have had so many late night conversations about this, and so many background conversations. Since we started this series on abuse, before it, but also, you know, especially now, we've had so many people disclosing their own experiences of childhood sexual abuse, of sexual abuse, of domestic violence, of all sorts of trauma, both out with the church, but predominantly people who have been affected by abuse within the church. And it really helps us to know that these conversations need to happen. One of the reasons why we decided to do this right now, apart from the fact that, as we said at the beginning, Alana, this was Alana's most important topic that we were going to cover. When Alana was ready to start shaping it and working through it, this was something that was super important to both of us, but especially to Alana. And in this series, Alana's taken a bit of a step back just to sort of be an observer and chime in whenever she wants to, because obviously Alana's got a lot to process too, and we want to make sure that we care for all of our guests, and of course, because Alana has experienced so much trauma in her own life. But then the headlines here in the United Kingdom, where they were talking about a court case which was happening in Scotland, where 2 church members were accused of historic abuse of 2 children in their care. Now, this obviously is something that matters to us, and we wanted to use the opportunity of the fact that a discussion was happening, that we know that we need to talk about abuse because people aren't talking about abuse, and there's this collective trauma and things need to change, and we need to have tighter policies and all of these types of things that survivors have been telling us for years. And no one's listening and no one's talking. And so we posted a comment, we posted a statement standing with victims, all victims of abuse in all cases, not being specific, but alluding to the fact that, there was a situation in the UK and it went dynamite. We were asked to take it down. We were asked to take another post, which was even more sort of generic, down in forums. People who really love and care for the couple who had been accused. And I think it's important that I acknowledge, just for the record, just to make it super clear, the couple were found not guilty of most of the charges. There was one charge of not proven, which is a uniquely Scottish verdict. We've mentioned this before, and if you want to go back and look at a statement that we released after the fact, you can find out more about that there. But not only were people coming out in support of the accused, which is a wonderful thing. We were finding out that word fasts were called before the actual trial had taken place, which we found to be deeply concerning. We also then were approached and lots of comments from people who were in support of the children who were in the care of the church members, the people who had come forward. And it was so polarized. And what was really interesting was it wasn't just members of the church. It was people who had left the church, people who were sort of somewhere in that spectrum, who had all taken sides. And it was so extreme that, and we were being told repeatedly, we shouldn't be talking about this. We were asked to take posts down. And so we did. We took the post down. And that weekend, we spent a lot of time. Alana and I had a word with each other. And then, in the words of the wonderful Nun and Derry girls, we had a word with ourselves, and we decided that we would not be silenced, that this is exactly why there is a problem in our society and in our church, that being silent when it comes to not even, and this is what I'm stressing here, not the case itself, because we didn't speak about the case. We weren't allowed to talk about the subject. And that is horrific. As an admin over on the Protect the Children page, you experienced that firsthand.
Yeah.
And this is how I kind of knew about your work, because obviously Alana and I, we follow the page and things like that. But at the exact same time, miraculously, as many church members would have it, Greenwich Spinach posted on TikTok and was pretty bloody mad. So yeah, would you like to talk about what happened there?
It was triggering. There's a longer story behind that, but there were two things happening. We were being asked to be silent by a relative. And I was conferring with Sam about what to do. There was also a raging debate about corporal punishment. So it was like exacerbating everything. We were hit by people supporting the accused. And Sam and I conferred about it, and he decided to take the post down just for his reasons. He can explain if he wants to. I was mad at him. I gave him my opinion. He decided to make the call. It's his page, his organization, whatever.
Let's just clarify. So what you did was you posted a news article.
Yeah. Okay. So I search every morning or whenever, every day for certain topics with abuse, and I just stumbled on this and the story, and it was K-blocked. So I had to like finagle and try and find a way to read it. And I put it up the first time and it got no notice, but the second time when I had an act, because I took the screenshots the first time, the second time when I posted an active link, went crazy. And with difficult cases like this, I confer with Sam. Like I said, it's his thing. And we decided to take it down. But I was mad at him. And I thought, I know this is his platform. I respect the organization, but I bloody well have my own platform. So I went and, did my own opinion on Facebook and on TikTok, because my case went down in Michigan at the same time as Monica Lewinsky's nationally. The whole entire country did not recognize that as grooming. They did not recognize the unequal power thing. And she was vilified and shamed, and it happened to me with the Mormons. And so it was like, why? Why is it always the life of this family? Guilt. I know if you're innocent unless accused, but there's two voices saying this happened to me, and we're just going to totally invalidate it. We're just going to say it didn't happen and go on whistling. And I couldn't handle it. It's like in the Harry Potter books, you can't say Voldemort. It's like something happened. Why would they go to court? According to the story, they went to the church. So did I. They went to the court system. So did I. And yet, let's play the sad song for the accused. Why? And the demand that we shut up, the demand that we're going to be, the threat that we're going to be sued. Why? This is public discourse. Why can't I talk about it? Over here we're talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It's going to be in the public discourse. And the more you say shut up, the more you try to silence it, all my red flags are like, it's true then. They are abusive then, because all your behaviors are showing that you want to cover up. Truth does not fear scrutiny. So if you're suddenly like, shut up, why? Because I've also in my life been innocent. And there's a power in that innocence. I knew I was innocent of what I was being told. And so I'll strip naked and dance for you. I am innocent. And so I guess there's a word confidence, confidari, ground of strength. Everything's based on trust. And if I can't trust that I'm safe talking about abuse, or I can't trust you when you're saying that abuse is okay, it's like we have no ground of trust left. If a victim can't go to somebody and be safe, even if it's a false accusation, because I got in an argument. I had a neighbor across the street in Lakeside where I first lived in Montana. She was always saying, but there's falsely accused people. Yes, it might be an exception, but we're shutting up people's voices. Do you know sometimes they don't speak up for like a decade, or they never do again? And you're so quick to shut it down and defend this person, this image of this person that you know and love. And I'll liken this back to something that my LDS counselor taught me in the Pearl of Great Price. Is it the Book of Abraham? There's the idols that Terah worshipped. And she kept asking me, what idols do your parents worship? My parents don't have false idols. Well, here's the false idol. We have this image, we want this happy family, this great patriarchy. And when it doesn't fit the idol, we still keep saying, but this is our idol, and it can't not be this way. The shattering reality is it's a lie. There's abuse in the church. It's happening. And just because you love somebody and you have this idolized notion of them doesn't mean that's who they really are. And they're depending on you to believe that and keep bowing down.
And let me just make really clear, we're not even talking about the specifics of that case. We're not saying that verdict was unsafe or should be doubted. We shouldn't be talking about the subject at all.
Oh.
Now, Alana was wrecked that week. Just coincidentally, being silenced coincided with a bit of a mental health, crisis for Alana, because it triggers that you're not supposed to be talking about this, and you were furious, girl. You were an absolute queen.
I felt suffocated again. Like somebody was laying on my chest and covering my mouth. And it's like, I'm not. I will die first. I will suffocate until I am dead. And I will yell until I have no breath left.
But, I think this is one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen is while many survivors, while many victims are not in a position, may never be in a position to speak up for themselves, they are watching, they are listening, they're watching your behavior. And on that post, something incredible happened while it was still live. So, we're going to talk about corporal punishment in a second, but because people were taking sides and they were making it really clear, and this is the real problem I've got with it. Like I say, this is not about changing verdicts or saying that they were found not guilty. That's happened. But the fact that so many people in the Mormon community had rallied, and ex-Mormon community had rallied round and said, these people could not possibly, because we've known them, we love them, they have done all of this good, they are angels, so it couldn't possibly have happened. And that was so worrying, because both in media comments, on our pages and private groups and on your Protect the Children page, these things were being watched by people who have experienced abuse. And in one case, in particular, we had a commenter saying, "Mum, I cannot believe that you are saying this. Don't you remember when it happened to me and I wasn't allowed to talk about it with another relative?" Now, it wasn't about the same situation. It wasn't about the couple at all. This was a completely separate situation. But what that commenter was taking from seeing someone taking sides in a situation that you weren't there, you don't know, you're not part of the jury, you haven't been presented all of this evidence, you took a side and you made it really clear where you stand. That person felt like, what does that mean for me and my story? Well, you know what it did? It made them go to the police. 2 cases where, 3 reports of abuse happened as a direct result of the comments thread on Protect the Children that we were informed about. 3, 1 went to the police that we know of at the moment. But so many others reading it maybe didn't.
Can I say something?
Please do.
So one of my concerns in therapy, my main therapist was with LDS Family Services. So I could trust her, They weren't going to mess with me and lead me away from the church, because that's what every other non-Mormon therapist said was, the church is your problem. But what she said to me was, because I was like, what if this is imagined? Do you think I'm exaggerating? Because there's always this constant gaslight and doubting yourself, because that's what you're raised in. And she said to me, even if what happened to you never happened, even if you are making it up or remembering it wrong or your perception's skewed, you need for me to validate you in order to heal. And that was my concern. That's why I was so angry, because all victim stories were invalidated.
Yeah. Yes.
And it may come out like McKenna, supposedly I'm not judging McKenna, but supposedly it was invalid. I don't care.
Yes.
Your reality is your reality, and the truth will out.
And that's exactly my point. This is about so much more than the fact that there was a case is almost incidental. I say that because I'm very aware there are real people and real lives involved in this. And, that Alana and I, this is our community. We care about what's happening here. These are our people that we're talking about. You don't get to assume that there's any sort of that we have some agenda or nefarious purpose, but we will talk about abuse. We absolutely will, because things need to change. Now, the other super sinister thing that was happening, and I think this is probably one of the two things that were happening at the same time. The one that we're going to talk about just now is the fact that in the case, it was reported. Now, I have to say the reporting was not great. So what is on the public record, it's problematic. It doesn't satisfy anyone. But the accused in the case, one of the accused had admitted that they used to discipline their children by hitting them with a belt. Now, there were no laws in the country against that at the time. I don't think there were laws in most of the world at the time, and that is being remedied thanks to the work of people who are currently involved in, we've got something coming up. There's a report coming out in England that Alana and I think are zooming into. There are lots of different things that are happening just now to try to change and make better policies and acknowledge the rights of children to feel safe and not be hurt. But on the comments thread that of the article that you shared, people were advocating for hitting children with belts. Do you want to speak a little bit about what that did?
It's difficult to trust someone who says that they love you and they hurt you. I spent a lot of years hating my mother because of that, because it seems so unfair. And it's interesting that I don't know what the incidents were. I can't recall why she flew off the handle. All I recall is that my mom hated me. I mean, a lot of my pictures in therapy were of her eyes and all of these implements. And that may not be the message that you're giving to your child, but they will identify with other victims and realize eventually that you victimized them. I remember watching Sybil in high school. I identified with Sybil. The one with Sally Field. They will learn to mask. They will learn to hide. But I became a great liar and a great sneak. Do you really want your kids to fear you? The other problem is when you grow up, how do you parent? I had to totally relearn everything. Most people have a nice, comfortable wheelbarrow rut where they'll do what their mother did. I was so jealous of girls that were close with their mom. I knew I'd never have that. And so I had to relearn. I had to go, like when I was pregnant with my first baby, I went and got books. How do I be a parent? I chose to breastfeed. My mom didn't. And it was like, I went a radical hippie. I chose attachment parenting on purpose because I didn't want to repeat it, but it has been hard. The patterns that you lay are so hard to not repeat. And I made mistakes. Instead of hitting, I screamed with the oldest two. So they feared me for that. And I wasn't the safe place for them to come to. So do you want generational trauma? Do you want your momentary fix and your howling kid and I won that battle? And do you want your grandchildren also feeling like they're not loved? I mean, you get your quick fix, but that's all you get. That's all you get. And the message that your kids learn is that they're worthless and dumb and can never please you. So eventually they fucking give up. I mean, I've got no contact with my parents. I will never please you. The last time I saw them, My dad, who's the constant psychoanalyzer, was like, "You're so different. You're so changed." "That's because you can't get a rise out of me anymore, Dad." I didn't say that. Can't say that. Because I don't care what you think anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. I can't please you. You're welcome. There's your reward. So, I mean, it's totally anathema to everything about the gospel. My mother used to sing "There is beauty all around" as a taunt. I mean, everything's poisoned by the use of physical force and violence. You know, there's also scriptures about like, wrath not, that your children don't despair. Well, we despair. We despair because of your wrath. We want to die. We know we can't be good enough. So why stay here? And that's what's going through a kid's head. I mean, is this really the gospel? Is this really what you want? I don't know. I don't think it's the way to go. I don't think it's even Christian to physically punish children.
So we're going to ask if you're going to come back, but I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions in wrapping up. Is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a safe place for children?
No.
What do you think the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints needs to do to become a safe place for children?
They need to have mandated reporting. They need to no longer have Kurt and McConkie in charge of everything. I think there needs to be a paid clergy, if need be, so that they can go to seminary. This whole idea of it's not, the word is not used infallibility, but yes, the infallibility or this like power of discernment needs to end. It's a mythology. They can't see into your heart and mind. They can't. Otherwise, they would have known that I had a true and honest heart. I don't know if it can be saved. I honestly don't. I mean, my case went all the way up to the first presidency. I wrote to Richard G. Scott. I wrote to Boyd K. Packer. I don't know if it can be fixed because it was founded on a predator. I mean, if you read about Emma's wedding day, she didn't know when she woke up that she was getting married that day. Josiah Stowell had a sleigh that Joseph borrowed, and he showed up and said, "We're getting married." What did he have on Emma? Was she pregnant? Had they had sex? What did he have on Emma that she married him that day? And her comment is, "He was as good as any other man." That doesn't sound like a girl in love. That doesn't sound like a man that respects her enough to get permission from her father, because the shade that he cast on her, you know, in that time, to elope meant you were either pregnant, you know, it was bad. And so that he would do that to her. And so this legacy had just snowballed and snowballed, and we keep accepting it. And Fanny Alger, everything just rolling. And Heber C. Kimball and all these multiple wives. It's like, stop already. I don't know if the church can be saved. I mean, the one with more experience in this is Brian Bressie, because the church actually told him it was a liability issue. That's why they're not protecting kids.
Is my microphone working, I presume?
It's not, although it was a second ago, Alana. If you're okay just to jump out and jump back in again, and what I'll do is I'll come to you just for a wrapping up comment as soon as you're back in the room. Okay, we're going to just remind our audience, thank you for staying with us. The fact that you are listening is huge. The fact that our hope is that you'll take these conversations and share them and amplify the voices of those who are speaking out. Alana, do you have a closing comment that you would like to share with us?
It was actually just something I just wanted to clarify, because I realised when you asked Katie that question about what can the church do, I laughed, and I don't want anyone to think that I was laughing at the question. I laughed because my answer to that would be, just don't exist. That would be my answer. And yeah. I'm sorry to those who still believe and find that offensive, but that would be my answer.
But that's your answer, and that's okay. That, you know, you guys have experienced trauma, and if that's your answer, then then bless it.
Yeah.
It's valid.
Obviously, not just in regards to abuse. I just think even the upbringing within the church, you know, the whole thing we spoke about before in regards to, you know, the mind games, the stuff that they indoctrinate into you that you believe, the lack of self-worth, just everything. It's so harmful, as are many churches around. You know, I joined through watching a podcast. I'm part of a ex-Jehovah's Witness group, because the woman that was doing the podcast had said, you know, that people from other faiths can join too. And some of the things I'm reading that people are posting about are so heartbreaking. The shunning, the abuse, you know, I read today of a parent, you know, whose child no longer wants anything to do with them because they've walked away from the faith. And it's just heartbreaking. And I just think, when will church systems stop causing this abuse and pain? Why can they not wake up and see that God would not want this? You know, if you truly believe in a God, would God want this pain and hurt to be caused to his children because they choose a different path? Because, you know, and obviously that's going off the fact of abuse, but obviously, you know, as I've said, you know, and I've cut my finger and I don't know how. I just, like yourself, Katie, you know, there's so many things. I don't know huge amounts about all the ins and outs. That's why Sarah's been amazing at helping keep us up to speed. But my main question that I've needed answered for so long, I don't know, I kind of wish myself that I'd done it so much sooner, but maybe it wasn't the right time for me to be dealing with it. But I keep saying this, the one question I need it answered is why we don't do background checks. I seen a post today about something about a trial thing in California or something that's been piloted right now, to do with background checks and fingerprints and well, it's just basically, it's a pilot scheme apparently. I mean, the person who posted it had kind of said, yeah, you know, almost because they're being forced into it now because of the laws, which, you know, it's sad that it comes to that. You know, it should always be the case that these things happen because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
not
so
because
the church is piloting a program to make sure.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to see if I could find my screenshot of it because you know me and my memory. Yeah. But yeah, to do with, was it fingerprinting and
for anyone working with children and youth must have a background check, and it sounds like those checks are pretty extensive, and that's been running for the past year, we think, in California.
But why just in California though? You know,
yeah, it's being
I know
piloted
it's piloting
there.
but you know, still it's
absolutely. So hopefully it's something that we could see rolled out. But yes, there is way more to do what, you know, than it's a level of protection.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole answer.
Oh no, it's not foolproof. No.
Something to add?
Please do. Please.
I was in primary presidencies for over 20 years. And rare was the branch president or bishop that valued the children. We got the scraps. I remember one particular bishop was like, you will get whoever you want because the children are the most important in my ward. And I think that the church won't change until we put down the idol of the image of the church, what we want it to be, and start, let, you know, like Jesus taught, let the little ones come unto me. Why are the little ones not our idol? You know, why? Why do they have to keep suffering? I mean, there's a scripture in Revelations about the souls under the throne of God. God has this rainbow over his throne, but under that throne are the victims screaming for justice.
Yep. You know what, the thing that I've been able to learn from the victims and survivors of abuse, both within the church and without the church, is that silencing people, it is traumatic, but it doesn't work. What you end up with is compounded trauma, but you also end up creating situations where people have to fight so much harder, regardless of what the church chooses to do. At some point, something has to change, and to be part of amplifying your voice, Katie, and calling for that change is an absolute honor. With our guests, we one of the things that we like to end with is to bless journeys. And you had mentioned that you're right, discernment is it becomes its own idol, and so this comes from our hearts rather than, you know, something that's prescribed by church, because we're not even supposed to be doing things like this, right, as women. But when you mention that they can't see your heart and they can't see your mind, you're absolutely right. But you laid that bare for us tonight. And the glimpse we got to see into your heart and mind, and everything that you lay out on TikTok, everything that you do in your work to continue to advocate for children, along with Sam Young, we bless your heart, we bless your mind. It is beautiful and funny and vulnerable, and it is holy, blessed anger, yes, indignation, and all of those things. And it is glorious to see. You inspire us, you make us laugh, and you have proven time and time again that you're a safe person. And to be that person for someone else, it's nothing short of godlike. And thank you for being that. So we bless your journey, and every step that you take on it. So glad that you're a friend. Okay, as we head out then, Alana, any final words? Peace out, I think, is that phase. The birthday girl's done.
I have a bit of a migraine, sorry, that's why I've been a bit quiet. I'll be good though.
Katie, have you got any final closing words, any thoughts that you want to leave with us?
Just thank you for giving me a place to tell my story.
We are always here. We're always here when you need to have your voice amplified. We are here for you, and thank you for lifting others. We are going to be back with Sam Young himself on Wednesday to talk about the work that he does. We are really excited for that. Then we're going to be speaking to Sarah next week, who's our absolute superstar, who supports us in the comments and is doing incredible work, has an incredible wealth of knowledge about what we can do as members of the church, worldwide, but also especially in the British Isles. We get to raise our voices and make a difference by listening to those who have experiences. We get to amplify their voice and call for change. So we're gonna tell you what we're going to tell you what we all have in mind and what we're thinking, and ask for your help as we do that. We're going to kind of give you your own little mission to take forward yourselves. The best thing that you can do to support tonight, the subjects that we're talking about tonight, first of all, go like the pages that we're linking to in the comments. Katie is the admin, and you're in very good hands on the Protect the Children website. If you want to donate, I think there is a link somewhere in the chat or around our YouTube page. Thank you for wanting to, but the kindest thing you can do for us right now is to like and subscribe, and share these conversations. If you need support with any of the things that we have been discussing tonight, we have some links in the comments. We're going to pop them in the show notes too, and you can always get in touch with us, and we will signpost you to places that might be able to help, but we are always here to listen. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate all the conversations and the comments. Thank you so much for being the most incredible community. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on Wednesday night, y'all.
Bye, everyone.